Get Ripple, the bright new drink with that ring-a-ding flavor. Ripple.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah, I had a really nice weekend. We're recording on a Sunday night, which is kind of nice because like we had the whole weekend to kind of just weekend.
Yeah, but some of us have to go to work in the morning.
Oh yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah. So it's not the greatest for me, but
No, Saturday nights are better. I agree.
yeah.
Okay, well, in that case,
Well, come to think of it, we normally record Thursday nights, and I still have to work on Friday morning.
remember when we used to record on Wednesdays?
Yeah. I think we've recorded on like every night of the week, and we've failed at every one of them.
It's okay.
But it's just harder to wake up on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
That's okay. It works.
Well, you didn't have to do the research. You could just
Yeah,
sit
that's
and listen
true.
tonight. So
I got
that's
that.
good for a
I
Sunday.
have that going for me.
I do have a full entire book report.
Oh,
I just
God.
made you hold all of the papers of my
all
research.
27 pages.
Not 27, 16,
Okay.
12 font, single space pages.
Oh, I never do that.
What?
Oh, wait, single spot. I thought you had double space. Sorry.
No. So a lot of pages. This was not supposed to be a two-parter, but it might be. But before we get started, this is the Ripple Podcast. I'm Rosa.
I'm Angela.
And we're going to tell you a story. But first, do you have any personal stories you want to tell me?
Not really. I feel like this whole week has been a blur. I had to drive to Los Angeles yesterday, which is another nightmare.
Ew, why?
I had to pick up Adam from the airport. I was really tempted to make him just get an Uber or something.
Oh,
because
I would have sent him in an Uber.
It was so bad.
Driving to LA is one thing that's not fun, but driving to LA to go to LAX is even worse.
It's the worst. Don't vacation there. It's awful unless you enjoy the smell of urine and being yelled at by crazy people. It's not a fun place to be.
No, LA is not all it's made out to be.
No, not at all. I got there early just because I do things that way. And so
if you
I
need
did
to be
it.
picked up from the airport, don't call me.
Yeah.
Because
I
I won't be there in time.
didn't want to drive around in circles at the terminals. So like less than a mile down the road, there's a Goodwill. And it like, I'm like, okay, let's see what
It's
LA
in LA.
has to
There might be
offer.
some nice brands and
And
stuff.
it was one of the few places where you could park without having to pay. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull in here. This is going to be like my little spot to wait. And I went inside. Guess how much they charge for fucking t-shirts in a Los Angeles Goodwill?
$7.99.
$14.
Not on.
For a Goodwill t-shirt.
Just a normal t-shirt. It wasn't like any fancy brand.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know brands. But I mean, it looked like a Goodwill. It's a Goodwill.
$14.
$14 for a t-shirt.
Nope.
Not going to happen.
So you walked away with nothing?
I will not be popping any tags at that Goodwill.
No.
So that's my story. How was your week?
We were in quarantine all week.
Yeah.
So we did homeschool all week. My daughter was going
Yuck.
crazy. We had no symptoms. We were not sick, but we were close contact. And because of that, we had to quarantine.
And that's why you should follow my life advice and don't be in close contact with anyone ever.
Just stay in your
Just
hole.
stay home.
No.
And you don't have that problem. I live in constant quarantine.
Yeah, your life is quarantine. We went to a soccer game today, and the head coach couldn't coach because he was at home being quarantined because he was in a close contact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's rampant. I feel like, I mean, and we have been talking about this for 2 years, but I feel like not a lot has changed.
Pretty
There's
much.
quarantine, and
I'm over it.
I was over it when it started.
Yeah. How's your 40 bags and 40 nights or whatever?
Oh, so good. So I did a whole Goodwill dump the other day. My entire car was full of bags.
You didn't find any good things to send to our listeners?
Well, no, I've got plenty more.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm saying, like, that was
good.
the first round. I have another pickup scheduled for early next month.
Uh-huh.
I've already got, I don't know, maybe 10 bags of stuff ready to go.
Okay. You need to set aside a bag for good spooky, mysterious, ripple type items.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just have a grab bag here. And then like at the end of every episode, I feel like we should pull a review from iTunes.
Okay. I think and I could be wrong, I haven't looked into this, but I think you can do reviews on Spotify now too, or
Oh,
at least
really?
ratings.
Okay.
I haven't looked into it. But yeah, we should go back to our Apple reviews, and people that have left us a review, we'll pick a random person.
Right. And then they can message, DM us, or
When they-
email us.
When they hear their name
Yes.
or their screen name. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll send them an item.
I
I'll
love
see
it.
if I have anything here. I think I might have some fun stuff.
We'll just get a giant crap pile
Well, yeah, sure.
of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
Totally.
I have cool stuff.
I have lots of cool stuff.
I'm always getting rid of things. So, yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay,
so
next week.
if you haven't left us a review yet, go do that so you can
have
be
a week.
possibly one of the first to get a cool giveaway. And I have a ton of Ripple Pod stickers too.
Oh, yeah. You'll get a free sticker with every giveaway.
And their stickers are awesome. All right, are you ready to hear my spooky ooky listener request story?
I'm ready.
So this was sent in by listener Lauren. Lauren sent us a message on Instagram that said we needed to research Dyatlov Pass. And this is Russian, takes place in Russia, Soviet Union.
Is it Soviet Union times?
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
okay.
Look at me knowing stuff. And it obviously has a lot of Russian words. So I'm going to do my best. But they have really, really long words with lots of V's and H's and K's and
Don't they
O's.
have like a lot of little dots and squigglies and stuff too?
Yep, a lot.
Yeah, that's way too much for me.
It's a lot. Remember when I did the Russian doll collector?
Yes.
I felt like this was much more difficult because it had a lot more people involved. So there's a lot of names and places of
Okay.
things. Get ready because it's going to get complicated.
Great.
So
Looking
first-
forward to it.
I'm going to tell you my resources because I forget. And there's a lot of them. So Wikipedia, National Geographic, Nature, all that's interesting, Science News, something called Vocative, V-O-C-A-T-I-V, which had, oh my gosh, some really, really, really interesting stuff. The Discovery Channel website, ERMAKVAGUS.com, and good old DyatlovPass.com. So, oh, and I also watched the Dyatlov Pass Incident on Amazon. I rented it.
Oh, okay.
It's totally not a true story. I mean, the Dyatlov Pass Incident is. The movie is not. It was directed by like Rennie Harlan,
I don't know who that is.
Gina Davis's ex-husband.
Oh, okay.
Back in 2013. And because I hadn't really heard of the Dyatlov Pass, even though like a bunch of other podcasts and stuff have covered it. It's not something I was familiar with.
Oh, I know about it.
Okay, I didn't. I knew nothing about it.
Okay.
And
That's exciting.
it was, but I went down lots of wormholes, like just getting
Oh,
deeper
yeah.
and deeper.
This is one of those where you can go in so many different directions because there's so many different theories and so
Right.
many little like side details that not everybody talks about. And yeah,
It was a
there's
lot. That's why I have 16 pages of info here. But I thought watching kind of like a fun take on it would kind of get me more
Fun
excited.
Take on it. It's a fun take
Well,
on
no,
it.
because it's a movie. It's a fictional movie.
Oh, okay.
So it was a fun take. It was supposed to be like
right.
a spooky movie.
And did they just like add their own like theory to it?
Well,
Did they
okay,
have it?
here's what it says. It says
Okay.
it was a film directed by Rennie Harlan. So the movie follows 5 American students retracing the steps of the victims, but being a work of fiction makes several changes describing the initial events.
So it's almost like Blair Witch.
100% like Blair Witch.
Oh, okay.
So it was, it was a fictional movie. I mean, spoiler alert, at the end, like
They all explode.
these like zombie people come and
Oh.
yeah, I mean,
Huh.
but it was
Okay.
entertaining. So the Dyatlov Pass Incident, in Russian, they kind of call it the Dyatlov Group Demise. It was an event in which 9 Russian hikers died in the northern Ural Mountains on February 1st and 2nd in 1959. So which I just kind of get into this stuff, but when this episode comes out, it'll probably be like February 1st or 2nd, which I thought was kind of interesting.
How many years is that?
I can't do that one.
It's a lot.
59 and 2022.
Uh-huh. Rosa's just staring at me.
Can you give me the answer? I don't know it.
Just a second. Elevator music.
Hold, please.
63 years.
Okay, so this is a hiking expedition that happened almost 63 years ago to the day.
That hiking expedition is about to retire.
Did they get not unemployment? Social Security?
If there's any left.
Yeah. So people, unfortunately, go hiking and go missing frequently. I mean, we've done other stories about missing hikers and people that have accidents. But what makes this story still so popular this many years later, I'm going to tell you. So in 1959, a group was put together by Igor Dyatlov, who was 23, for a skiing expedition across the northern Urals.
I'm just imagining a 23-year-old named Igor, and it's kind of making me laugh a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it great? Isn't it such a good name?
It's great.
Yeah. Igor. I love it. There's some really good names, if I say them right. So he is going to go on this skiing expedition across the northern Urals in the Soviet Union. We're going to go with just the Soviet Union. So Igor started hiking at a very young age with his older brother. And like when I say hiking, these aren't like the hikes that we do in like Ojai. Like not to like some beautiful waterfall to see some trees. These are like hikes in Russia where it's snowing and you have to use a compass to even know which direction you're going, because there's like whiteouts happening because of the wind, and you're carrying like these heavy loads of food plus the water you need to drink and your tents, and you're wearing like giant ski boots and lots of clothes because it's cold. It just sounds miserable.
That sounds very Russian. I feel like that very much tracks with the whole Russian stereotypes. It's like they're just hiking around
in the snow.
Absolutely. And they're probably just like chugging vodka for warmth.
Speaking of vodka, I brought you a vodka drink.
I know. Rosa is trying to destroy my New Year's resolution. She noticed she didn't ask me about mine because she poisoned me with the vodka that she poured me. And she told me some fucking Trader Joe's punch or something.
It's Trader Joe's punch.
It has vodka in it.
Well,
and I'm
a
not
little
supposed
bit.
to be drinking, but here we are.
Talking about Russia. You got to drink vodka.
I guess so.
So Igor was at the time attending Ural Polytechnical Institute, or UPI, and he wanted to hike the subpolar Urals, and he knew of some other friends that wanted to hike in that area as well. So he goes to his buddy Sergei Sogrin, who was one of the Institute's most experienced hikers. He had fulfilled the requirements of Master of Sports in Hiking, had ranked as instructor in mountaineering, and was currently the chairman of the mountaineering section of a sports association. So, like, he knew what he was doing. He was like some hardcore hiker in Russia. So Igor and Sergei, they're like reviewing their plan, and they decide to actually change routes at one point and hike the northern Urals instead. So the two other experienced hikers from UPI were also planning a hike in that area, and their names were Yuri Bilnav and Zeneda Kolmogorvia. Yuri and Zeneda invited Georgy Krivonischenko, Alexander Kolovtov, and Yuri Yudin to join on their hiking adventure. I'm sure I said all of those names 100% correct.
Yes, we're going to go with it.
Okay. So all these people are super experienced hikers. They're not just like going along for a trek. They're like, they know what they're doing. They're in school for hiking. And they either want to...
Wait, they're in school for hiking? That's a thing?
Well, like a lot of them are getting experience to get different rankings to be either hiking leaders or to get jobs out where they have to hike in the snow. Yeah, because they're getting different like ratings. You know when you like lifeguarding, there's lifeguard 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
This is like hiking.
Huh. All right. I'm sure there's probably something like that here.
So each member of the group, which consisted of 8 men and 2 women, was an experienced grade 2 hiker with ski tour experience, and after completing this hike, they'd be receiving their grade 3 certification once they got back. So at the time, this was the highest certification available in the Soviet Union and required candidates to traverse 300 kilometers.
How far is that?
190 miles.
That's a long way.
190 miles in the snow.
That sounds miserable. I'm sorry.
So the reason, like I was saying, they wanted to do this was because it was one of the most difficult treks, and they would get the highest level of ranking. And in order to do that, they would also receive the Master of Sports in Tourism, which could improve like their career prospects and get higher paying careers.
Okay.
So maybe they're like wanting to be like a tour guide. Was that like a thing?
I don't.
In the snow?
I mean, maybe, but like the way you're describing it, it's like, okay, let me give you this tour of this snow-covered mountain in a whiteout. Like, that doesn't sound fun. And I love outdoors and hiking and stuff. Tacos are here.
Okay, dinner's done.
Yeah, we just had a quick taco break.
All right. The group started out by taking a train on January 25th, 1959. Like, so they're all together now. The 8 men, the 2 women, and then they get in the back of a truck. Like, they hitch a ride in the back of a truck for 3 hours to the District 41, which is like a logging site, which is at the bottom of the mountain.
This sounds like they're entering the Hunger Games.
District 41.
Yeah.
It's an agriculture district. So at the bottom of this mountain, they eat, they rest, and they prepare for their next day that's going to be up the mountain. So they had different like diaries or journals that they wrote, and there were some cameras that they brought with them as well. And after the incident happened, they actually like discovered some of these diaries and developed the film and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some of these pictures.
It's nutty.
We've got to post them on the Instagram.
We will.
On the
Totally.
gram.
So looking at these pictures and reading these diaries and stuff, the entire group is like in great spirits. Like you can see the excitement on their faces. But one of the hikers, the Yuri Yurden guy, he was having really bad sciatic pain, and he also had rheumatism and a congenital heart defect. And he's like,
Wait, he's one of the hikers?
mm-hmm. Yuri Yurden.
That sounds like a bad idea.
When you have sciatic pain, rheumatism, and a congenital heart defect, to go hiking for 200 miles in the snow?
Yeah.
Well, he's
Maybe.
like, you know what? I'm not feeling it.
But maybe he does like one of those cryo chambers, but just Russia outside in the wilderness is
Like a natural one.
a cryo chamber.
Mm-hmm. Could be. But his sciatic was really bothering him. So he's like, I can't do it.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull out, and I'm gonna go back home. So
Okay.
he left on his own.
All right.
But before they left, Igor said he was going to send a telegram to their sports club as soon as the group got back, like to let people know what's going on. And originally they had thought that they'd be back around February 12th. But according to Yuri, because they spoke with Yuri after, Yuri had said that Igor had told him that it was probably going to take a little bit longer. So, which was kind of to be expected, give or take a few days, depending on weather and everything. So the next day, a little later than they had planned, the remaining 9 students started the difficult hike. They left a bunch of their supplies near some woods that they wouldn't need on the trek out, but they would grab them on the way back. So after about 2.5 miles, the group decided to set up camp on the eastern slope of the Kholat Shiakli, which in the language of the Mansi, which is like a local indigenous tribe, it means dead mountain.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm. But the name of this mountain pass also means like lack of game. So not necessarily like dead, you're going to go die here, but it means like there's nothing here. Like everything is dead.
Just ice.
Right.
And it almost like the Andes situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so this wasn't where they had planned on camping, but because the weather conditions were getting worse and like quickly and not being able to see very well, they actually had gone off course a little bit and they veered west.
They're only 2 miles in. Things are already not looking great.
Right. So by the time they had realized this, they decided to set up camp on the slope of a mountain rather than like the wooded area that was almost a mile away downhill. So the wooded area would have like offered more shelter from the elements, but they would have had to climb back up that extra mile the following morning. So it's kind of like backtracking, and they're like, we've already made it, just this far. Let's just camp out here and we'll be good. So where they stayed was just 10 miles away from Mount Orthorin, where they were headed. So they stopped a lot earlier than planned, but it was, I guess, just terrible conditions. And I'm going to kind of talk about it a little bit later, but so I said they set up their tent like on a slope, and there's something with like ice, tent stuff, and like the degrees of the mountain you're not supposed to set up in certain, not degrees in weather, but like degrees of an angle for fear of an avalanche. And I believe it's 30 degrees. I have to look. But
so if it's steeper, if 30 degrees or steeper, you don't want to.
Right.
Because the mountain's going to fall on you.
Pretty much.
God, this sounds awful.
So when February 12th came and went and no telegram had been received, no one really got too worried because, like I said, a few days past extended, expected return dates was kind of normal. And then Yuri had also said that, like Igor had said, it was probably going to take a little bit longer. So people weren't really that surprised that they weren't back yet. But by February 20th, no one had still heard anything from the group, and search parties were sent out. The families of the hikers demanded that this happen. And at first it was just like a bunch of volunteers and students and teachers from the school. But shortly thereafter, the police and military got involved as well. So sometime in the middle of the night, when the 9 hikers were camping, something made this group of very experienced hikers flee their tent. None of them were really dressed for the sub-zero temperatures, and they just seemed to disappear. The wind speeds were up to a hurricane force, which was like 45 to 67 miles an hour. And then snowstorm and temperatures were reaching negative 40 degrees Celsius.
That's not a real thing. That's not a real temperature. That doesn't exist.
Negative 40.
No.
So when the searchers are searching, the first thing that they find was the tent. And
wait, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Negative 40. Like, let's just think about that for a second.
No,
like, these
I don't want to.
Experienced hikers, why would you go anywhere when there is a risk for it to be negative 40?
Because they live in Russia.
Can you even be alive in negative 40?
I mean,
is that just what Russia's like?
All the time? Do you want me to see what the temperature is in Russia right now?
Yeah, tell me what it is. And that,
Hey,
I mean,
Siri.
Russia's a pretty big place, but like,
what's the temperature in Russia?
In Moscow, Russia, it's 19 degrees.
That's still too fucking cold. Like, I don't know if I've ever even experienced that in my entire life.
Oh, I doubt it. 19?
That's not a real temperature.
Yeah. Negative 40.
No.
So the first thing that the rescue parties or the search parties find is the tent. And this is on February 26th.
And were they all in the same tent? Or did
they
have,
were.
like,
they all shared one
okay.
tent. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you would have to when it's fucking negative 40 degrees.
So the tent had been cut open from the inside. The supplies, including cameras, journals, were scattered around, but there were no bodies. So the only signs that anyone had been there were the 8 or 9 sets of barefoot footprints.
Hypothermia.
The searchers followed these footprints, and they had been covered like with snow, but like they knew that they were still there. Like, you're kind of tracking something. So like maybe a little bit of light snowfall had fallen, but you could see that there were still footprints.
Okay.
And they were led to the edge of the nearby woods that were about a mile from the tent. That, like I had said, like they could have hiked back down to those woods for more shelter, but they were like, no, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
Following these footprints and down by the woods, there were signs like that they had lit a small fire, and there they also found 2 bodies. There they had found Gregory, who was 23, and Yuri, who was 21. Both men were barefoot and wearing only their underwear. There were signs that someone had climbed a tree 16 feet up.
Wow.
So, a mile away, barefoot, only in underwear, started a fire.
Oh, this is all the same
Area. Mm-hmm.
No, but like the same person is doing all of this. The same 2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, on one of the sites that I looked at, I actually read the translated, obviously, but the coroner's autopsies for each of these people.
Yeah.
And someone had translated it and then also kind of like summarized it. With Yuri's here, I'm going to kind of like give the longer version.
Okay.
But the rest of them are kind of going to be like the summary versions.
Yeah.
So, this is George or Yuri Krivanishekino autopsy.
Okay.
So he's got bruises on the forehead and a bruise around his left temporal bone. Diffused bleeding in the right temporal and occipital region due to damage to temporal's muscle. His tip of his nose is missing. He's got frostbitten ears. Bruises on the right side of the chest. Bruises on both hands. Detachment of the epidermis on the back of his left hand at a width of 2 centimeters. Portion of the epidermis from the right hand is found in the mouth of the deceased.
Of his own mouth?
Mm-hmm. Bruises on thighs with minor scratches. Bruise on left buttock. Abrasions on the outer side of the left arm. Bruises on the left leg. Burn on the left leg. Cause of death, hypothermia. He froze to death. So the presence of the skin between his teeth that was torn from his hands might suggest that he tried to stay on like the tree for as long as he could, some suspect. Like maybe to keep himself awake. I don't know. But that's what they're thinking. Like he like bit himself to like wake up maybe. Some other theories speculate that it was a result of his dedication to cut as many tree branches as he could. I don't really understand how that would play in.
Like trying to make a bigger fire?
Or maybe to look further and further out. Like the higher you get, the farther you can look.
How far did you say he went?
A mile.
No, up the tree.
16 feet.
Holy shit.
But,
Okay.
But then there's others that claim that there was something on the ground that was keeping him up the tree.
Oh, but there's no other footprints.
Right.
Okay.
So Yuri's autopsy was very similar to George's. There was lots of burning, scrapes, and abrasions. He did have some, quote, foamy gray fluid coming from his right side of his mouth. And this is common with someone or something causing pressure to a chest cavity. But his official cause of death was labeled hypothermia. So the searchers then found the body of Igor Dyatlov, who was 23, Zeneda, who was 22, Rustim, who was 21, and all 3 of these bodies were kind of in strange poses, and the causes of their deaths were a little bizarre. So this is like Igor's autopsy summary. He had lots of bruising and cuts. He had metatarsophalangeal joints on the right hand, and it had red and brown bruises. And this is common injury in like hand-to-hand fighting. So like it said to get a better idea of the injuries, like just make a fist. And like this is the part of the hand where you would be hitting someone repetitively. His cause of death was hypothermia. Zeneda's autopsy said that she was better dressed with lots of layers of clothing on, but she still had a lot of bruising over her body. Her cause of death, hypothermia. And Rustim, he had minor brownish red abrasions on his forehead. He had a red bruise on the upper eyelid of the right eye with a hemorrhage into the underlying tissues, traces of blood discharged from the nose, swollen lips, swelling and lots of small abrasions of irregular shape to the right half of his face, abrasions on the left side of his face. His epidermis is torn from the right forearm. Bruises in the metatarsophalangeal joints, again, like the hand-to-hand combat. He had cherry bruises on the medial aspect of the left arm and left palm, bruises on his left tibia. And then they discovered that a fracture of his frontal bone and hemorrhages in the temporal muscles of in his skull. So his injury pattern was a little bit different from the pattern usually seen in injury suffered by a freezing man in the last minutes of their life. And they said it's like Rustin fell repetitively on his face without even trying to slow his fall with his hands. Maybe like sliding down a mountain or a hill and just like let his face fall first rather than like trying to slow himself down. And then every time that he fell, he like seemed to hit a different side of his head. Go ahead.
Okay, but when they're saying falling, is that like he's on the slope and he's like rolling down the hill, or is he repeatedly getting up and falling and getting up and falling? Or do they not know?
They don't know.
Okay.
But they did say that it was really unusual to see a man who was probably in like the best physical shape of the group to see these kind of injuries. So this guy named Boris Alksevich Vozogendi, he did the autopsies, and he suggested that this could be done with some foreign blunt object, the bruises on or the fractures on his skull. The medical autopsy further states that Rustin probably suffered loss of coordination due to initial shock right after the blow that could speed up his death from hypothermia. But his official cause of death was hypothermia.
Okay.
So he's like, this autopsy guy, he's like, maybe someone like smacked him up upside the head a couple times and then left him there to die in the snow. On May 4th, under 13 feet of snow, so this is 2 months later now, Ludmila Alexandriova Dubinina, who was 20, her body was found. She had severe trauma to her chest. According to her autopsy, she was found wearing layers of clothing and a sweater that had been wrapped around her left foot. Her tongue was missing. Soft tissues missing around her eyes, eyebrows, and left temporal area, partially exposing the bone. Both eyes were missing. Nose cartilages broken and flattened. Ribs 2, 3, 4, and 5 were broken on the right side, and ribs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are broken on the left side. Soft tissue of the upper lip was missing. Teeth and upper jaw were exposed. Massive hemorrhage in the heart's right atrium. A bruise in the middle left thigh, and damaged tissues around the left temporal bone. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I have lots of questions about this one. Maybe you're going to tell me, though, before I even... Do you have more about her?
Go ahead.
Okay. So do they know if this happened, like the broken ribs and this, like, terrible trauma to her chest? Do they know if that was post-mortem or if that was what caused her death?
Her cause of death is hemorrhage into the right atrium of the heart, multiple fractured ribs, and internal bleeding.
Okay, so that caused her death. That wasn't later on. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, how far away was she found from the tent?
Actually, not that much further. She was in a different area. Bless you. But obviously, you know, she was 13 feet under the snow.
But a bunch of time had passed, right? So
2 months.
Snowed enough. Does it snow 13 feet?
In 2 months?
Yeah. Is that a thing? How does cold weather work?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's like 70 degrees right now, and I'm in a sweater.
Yeah, I'm wearing a jacket. The other thing is, because you automatically assume, right? This is the soft tissue, her eyes, her lips, all of these things would be like the first things that like scavengers would eat, right? But this is the dead mountain. Are there scavengers? And do they know like what caused those pieces of her body to not be there, to eat her eyeballs and her nose and her lip and everything else?
And her tongue. Great question. Okay, so the whole tongue is missing thing. Just the vagueness of that statement on the autopsy was kind of like red flags for a lot of people that analyzed this because of the thoroughness of all the other autopsies, like the just detailed information that was given, and then just that it was missing in this one. So there was like the person doing the autopsy wasn't like it was removed by a sharp object or it was ripped out or, you know, it was just, there was no real explanation of how it was removed or, you know, an educated guess onto how it was removed or what removed it. And then if you look at her picture, like, because there's pictures of them when they found them and stuff.
Really?
I'll show it to you. I should have pulled it up for you. But you look at her picture from when her body was found. She was a beautiful woman, like gorgeous. And then you look at this picture, she still looks beautiful. Like her face doesn't look like it was attacked by some scavengers.
What? Okay, hold on.
Are you going to look it up?
Yeah, because I don't understand how that's possible. It said her jaw is exposed.
But her, like, her cheeks, her nose, her ears.
What's her name?
I'm going to spell it for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Lyudmila. And then the next word is Dubinina.
Okay, so I'm looking at, oh God. Wow.
But do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah, it's almost like, and this is a weird thing that we're doing on a podcast right now, is describing the way somebody looks like when they've been dead for a couple months in the snow. But she looks like if you were to cosplay like like a sea witch. Is that terrible? But like a mermaid or something. Like she has discoloration on her face, and it's a black and white picture, but you can tell it's like kind of, but you can still see. So it almost like if I just saw this picture and you're like, okay, what happened to this person? I would imagine that like she was in a shipwreck or something, and her body was just underwater and like.
But she isn't like bloated.
No, I don't. This is terrible. I don't know. She just looks like she has like little, like, okay, if I were to guess like what ate her face, it would be like fish. Is that weird?
No. Let's play the game. What ate her face?
Oh, can that be the title of this podcast? Is that awful? No. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. She does still look very
together.
I mean, it must be because of the cold weather, and she was just basically in a freezer for several months. But yeah, she doesn't look bloated. She doesn't look like...
She still looks like a pretty young girl.
Yeah, because there isn't any real decay, but there's definitely something that... I mean, it's more than just frostbite. It's like something ate at her face. Oh gosh, she even has like little tiny ice crystals on her. Yeah. No, I totally know what you mean. It almost looks like
if a wild animal were to go after you, you'd think the whole face would be ripped.
Right.
More.
Or even like a scavenger or something, it would have been torn apart, but it's still very much put together, even though these pieces are missing. That's totally contradictory. No, but you have to look at the picture to understand.
You do. So her autopsy stated that in her stomach, there was around 100 grams of coagulated blood. And some people speculate that the reason for that was because her heart was still beating when her tongue was removed.
Wait, what?
Do you want me to tell you that again?
Say that one more. First of all, I just want to say that I hate that word.
Coagulated?
Yeah. It's Go ahead.
So in her autopsy, they said that there was around 100 grams of coagulated blood. And then there's people that think that the reason that there was so much blood in her stomach was because her heart was still beating.
Okay.
when her tongue was removed.
So it's pumping the blood to that open wound in her mouth.
She's like
That's
drinking
causing
her own
to
blood.
swallow. Oh my God. What the hell?
And did you know?
Is that, wait. Oh, sorry.
I learned this in like, I don't know, 4th grade maybe. But like the tongue is the strongest muscle in your body. So to remove.
That's not a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
No way.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The tongue. Are you questioning my 4th grade science knowledge?
Yes, I am. Your 4th grade science teacher lied to you. Hey, Google. It's just Googled. Hey, Google. Stupid Android. What's the strong?
She's typing it in now. Her phone doesn't listen to her voice.
It does.
She needs an iPhone.
What's the strongest muscle in the human body? Okay, it's your jaw.
It's your tongue.
The strongest muscle. Yeah.
Is your tongue.
It's not. Okay, the second one says it's your tongue. But the first one says it's your jaw.
It's your tongue.
That's weird.
Cause of death, hemorrhage. I already told you this, but I'm going to tell you again.
Okay.
Hemorrhage into the right atrium of the heart, multiple fractured ribs, and internal bleeding. So the next guy. So he has a few different names. The name that he was given at birth is Seaman.
No, it's not.
S-E-M-E-N. But he liked his friends to call him Sasha.
Okay.
So Sasha Zolotarev, he was found wearing a lot of clothing as well, so he didn't like freeze. And this clothing is probably what kept him alive a lot longer. He also had like a newspaper on him, a compass, and some money, as well as a camera around his neck. When they talked with Yuri, the guy that went home, about this camera, he was really surprised. He thought that there was only 4 cameras on the trip, and they found those ones in the tent. And he didn't know about this like extra 5th camera. And I guess like the film in it was ruined, unfortunately. But it was just, to me, it was kind of weird. Like, okay, you're fleeing from this tent from someone or something, but you're going to grab your camera and like leave behind food or your shoes. I don't know. I just kind of thought that was weird.
The camera was on his neck. Maybe
while he was
had
asleep, maybe? You think he slept with a camera around his neck?
Oh, I don't know. I have theories.
Okay. Well, Sasha's eyeballs were missing. He was missing soft tissue around his left eyebrow. He had bone exposed. His chest was broken. Ribs 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 on the right were broken. He had an open wound on the right side with exposed bone. So the body of Alexander Kolovov was found well-dressed but missing shoes and a hat. There were many rips and tears in his clothing. When his body was found, his jacket was open. And I had said, like before, like why would someone who's freezing to death have their jacket open?
But isn't that like a hypothermia thing?
When you feel like your body's getting hot?
Yeah, like when you get to this point where you're so cold that you start feeling like it's a, I don't know what causes it. You know what I mean? Have you heard of this?
Yep, I'm going to talk about it.
Okay, cool.
But I still think, even though you may feel really hot, I think these people are such, experienced hikers that they would know about that feeling and know that, like, if they...
But are you, like, all there at that point?
Oh, maybe not.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, what... You should look into that. Like, what's your mindset at that point? Do you know what's going on?
Or are you just going on strictly chaos?
Yeah.
So Alexander's was missing soft tissue around his eyes. His eyebrows were missing, which is kind of weird. Like, your eyebrows are missing.
I know with frostbite, like, all of your extremities, but I don't know.
Your eyebrows.
The tip of your nose freezes.
Yeah.
Does he have a really
bushy eyebrow? I don't know.
Brow?
His skull bones are exposed. He had a broken nose, an open wound behind his ear, a broken neck, bleeding in the underlying tissues of the left knee, softened and whitened skin of the fingers and feet, which is a sign consistent with exposure to wetness by live skin. His overall skin color had a gray-green color with a tinge of purple. So, again, this autopsy wasn't as detailed as the first few. It was kind of like lacking a lot of the details. But his official cause of death, according to the autopsy, was exposure to elements. And then Nikolai Fabo-Brignol's autopsy was, it stated that he was well protected against the coldness of the Siberian winter. It was suggested that him and Sasha might have been outside of the tent at the time of the mysterious threat. This explains why both men were better dressed for the elements. He had multiple fractures to his temporal bone. He had a bruise on his upper lip on the left side, hemorrhage of the lower forearm. His fractures that he did have were extremely large and unusual. And so I'm going to kind of read like a conversation between this medical doctor, B.A. Vozrodeny, by L.N. Ivanov, about Nikolai's injuries. So the question is, what could have caused injuries that Nikolai suffered? And the answer is, he could have been thrown down from a height of a grown man. He might have slipped and fell. However, deep fracture of the skull base suggests that his injuries are similar to a victim that was dropped with a great speed and strength from a quickly moving car. Question: could we assume that he was hit by a rock that was held by another man? Answer: in this case, we would see damaged soft tissue, and we don't see that on the body. So do you want to say what you think happened?
Well, I have a lot of theories, but just based off, if I'm not thinking about like other stories that I've heard, just based off of what you're telling me, I would think that there's some indication of an avalanche, but then a lot of things that don't make sense for it to be an avalanche.
Such as?
Like the tent wasn't buried, right? The tent is still there.
That's the first thing they found.
Okay. But what if the tent, like the piece of snow that the tent was on, right? What if that kind of broke apart and slid all together as a whole? Is that a possibility? Is that something that can happen in an avalanche?
Like it just pushes the tent like a sled?
Right. Because isn't that how avalanches happen, kind of?
I've never been in an avalanche.
Because, like, if you think about the one guy who climbed up the tree, like, if he heard this, saw this coming, and he's just going as fast as he can, and he's looking for higher ground, and he just climbs a tree. And then you have the woman who, her tongue is completely gone, but she was found under 13 feet of snow. So maybe the force of the avalanche caused her ribs to break. And maybe she bit off her own tongue and she was buried in the snow when she died.
So I do know that the most common cause of death in an avalanche is actually asphyxiation.
Oh, because you're just covered and you just suffocate?
Mm-hmm.
That's horrifying. That sounds like a terrible way to die.
Being suffocated by snow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that would explain like these guys that are, I don't know. I wouldn't think that if you're in an area that cold, you would sleep in your underwear. But that
why are they? Yeah. Isn't that strange?
Maybe they were in the process of changing. But then to cut the tent open, and it was
from
cut
the
like
inside
with a knife, right?
Uh-huh.
Not just ripped with your hands.
Right.
That's bizarre.
So there's theories such as infrasound-induced panic, Yetis, katabatic winds, avalanches, like you had said, nuclear weapon testing, UFOs, all these different things that made these 9 super experienced hikers flee their tent, unprepared for the elements, and suffer unexplained deaths. So I'm going to give you a few of these theories and then let you decide based on the information I give you which one you think was the actual cause. And then I'm going to give you some other information that you may find really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
So just so you know right now, the investigation team at the time they came to the conclusion that the reason these people died was, quote, an unknown natural force.
Okay, can I tell you really quick? Like when I've heard about this story before, but I don't remember the details. But my original thought before you started telling me the details that you had was that the Soviet Union was testing some sort of
Nuclear,
like top secret weaponry, and they were doing it out in this area, not knowing or not caring that these people were there. I've had that thought.
Okay. The most obvious, like you said, would be an avalanche. But I'm going to kind of go over that and kind of get rid of that theory right away. Maybe. So first, there's no signs of an avalanche reported by the search team. Like avalanches, like when they happen, there's, you can see parts of the mountain missing and you can see the debris like pushed out of the way. There wasn't any of that. There was no snow pattern. The tree line wasn't damaged. And then the average slope angle of where the tent was located wasn't steep enough for an avalanche to have occurred. And it was 30 degrees. That's kind of like that angle. The hikers were all experienced, and like you'd think that they would know where it was safe to set up camp. And then also the injuries on the victims were not typical for avalanche deaths. And then since this incident, over 100 expeditions have been held in the same area, and none have ever reported conditions that might have caused an avalanche. And then also like the footprints, like they're not running away from some kind of danger. Like if you hear an avalanche, I mean, you see that in all the movies or even cartoons, like someone yells avalanche and people like scatter, they run. These footprints, they were like consistent to the walking pattern of a person at like a normal walking pace.
Okay, I think this may be why I thought that was some sort of weird weaponry. Like their brains are just scrambled, right?
They're just fried. They're walking barefoot in the snow. Not running, walking. So that's the avalanche theory. The next theory is the Mansi tribe. Remember I kind of mentioned them?
Yes.
They're the ones that named like that mountain and area. They're actually indigenous reindeer herders.
Oh, wow. That sounds magical.
Don't they? Like they'd hang out with Santa. They were actually never conquered by European settlers, and they just like coexisted for centuries with little to no contact because the area is so large and like who really wants to go out there? And some suggested that they attacked the group when they were coming toward their land. And a few of the Mansi people were actually interrogated, but injuries of the hikers, as well as there being only like bare footprints around and not like Mansi people footprints, it didn't support this theory. And the Mansi tribe is also known for being very peaceful. And Igor actually respected and appreciated these people a lot. And he even made up his own Mansi Russian dictionary that he took with him on the trip. So according to the autopsies, like the fatal injuries found on the last 3 bodies especially could not have been done or caused by a human being because, quote, the force of the blows had been too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged. So the Mansi tribe theory, out or in?
I'm going to say out, but simply because, I mean, obviously all of the things that you said, but also like, why would that make you cut your tent open? And
yeah, you would think like if the Mansis were attacking them, the cut would be from the outside.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like what you said previously, why are you walking away? Wouldn't you be running?
Trying to get away fast.
Yeah. I don't like that one. That one doesn't make, and like the footprint. Yeah. No, I'm going to say no on Mansi.
Okay. The next theory is infrasound.
Okay.
So Donnie Icar's 2013 book, Dead Mountain, hypothesized that wind going around the Kholat Sakyle created like a vortex, which can produce infrasound capable of inducing panic attacks in humans.
Oh, creepy.
So according to this theory, the sound created such panic and discomfort in the hikers that they fled their tent as quickly as they could. Once they were far enough away from the sound, they would have been able to like focus again, like kind of get their minds straight, but they would have been like so far away from their tent that they would already have started to freeze. And because it was nighttime, they wouldn't have been able to see their way back to camp. And then they say with this infrasound theory that the three with like the dramatic, super hardcore injuries, they just fell over the cliffs to their death.
But where'd her tongue go? Okay, but has anybody ever documented sound that's made people that crazy? And can it occur naturally?
I mean,
Also,
there are
is there
certain frequencies that
make you poop?
I hadn't heard of that frequency.
Yeah.
There's a pooping frequency.
Yeah.
No, there's not.
The brown note.
That is not a thing.
It might be from a movie, but it might also be a real thing. I can't remember.
I mean, there's like dog whistles, like frequencies that only animals can hear.
But is there anything documented that makes you go crazy?
I don't know. According to this, there is.
Okay, well, the brown note might be something that I tell you about
Last thought in a shot.
as the last thought in a shot.
Oh my gosh.
Because I kind of think it's a real thing, but it may have been from like a Dumb and Dumber movie. I don't remember.
Kind of sounds like it is.
Okay, we'll find out.
All right, the next theory is the katabatic wind. In 2019, a Swedish-Russian expedition was made back to the site.
Why are people going back there? Like, that just sounds like a terrible idea.
This is
like,
2019.
No, but no. It's just nothing good happens there.
And after investigations, they proposed that a violent katabatic wind was caused by is what caused the death of the hikers.
Also, am I supposed to know what that word means?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
So katabatic wind is pretty rare, but it can be extremely violent. And it would have made it impossible to remain in the tent. And the most rational course of action would have been for the hikers to cover the tent with snow and then seek shelter behind the tree line. On top of the tent, there was also like a flashlight left on, probably so that they could see their way back to the tent. But if these winds were so strong, how would they expect the flashlight to stay in place? So, and it still doesn't really explain like the lack of clothing and supplies that they took when they left the tent.
I don't like that one.
No, katabatic wind.
No.
All right. And
Do you
then,
have a theory?
I do.
Okay, are you going to save it for the end?
So the next theory is kind of what you had mentioned. The paradoxical undressing is what they call it when you're like taking like your clothes off.
Even though you're freezing?
Right.
Okay.
International Science Times suggested that the hikers' deaths were caused by hypothermia, which can induce a behavior known as paradoxical undressing. So like the person experiencing hypothermia, they actually feel like they're getting so hot that they start like physically burning. And it makes the person want to take their clothes off to cool down. So maybe that's what happened like to the first 6 people. And that's why they're not wearing their clothes.
Yeah, that would be a
simple explanation.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't explain the death of the last 3. And some people suspect that the death of the last 3, because they were wearing so many clothes, is because they found maybe their friends dead and they took their clothes off of their friends to help keep them warm.
Were they able to determine if any of the clothing belonged to somebody else?
They did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So the paradoxical undressing like theory kind of ignores the fact that the bodies were undressed after they died, and they don't, they can't really tell like if it was done by other members with the help of a knife, or if they just took it off of them. The paradoxical undressing, like I could see maybe happening, but to me, it's more that their clothing was taken off by their friends just because they were already dead. Yes? No?
Yeah. Okay. That'd be really sad. But yeah, I mean.
Parachute mines.
Makes sense. Parachute mines?
Parachute mines. So there's people that suggest that the path of the hikers were on was near where the Soviet was practicing parachute mine exercises.
Okay.
So this is when an aircraft drops a mine with a parachute.
Oh.
So in this scenario, though, the hikers would have heard like these loud explosions happening and then freaked out and run out of their tent out of fear, and maybe were too scared to return to the tent because of these explosions happening. So also with this thought, it would make sense that some of the hikers ran away, got turned around, and froze. And when parachute mines are exploding, they actually explode when they're still in the air rather than when they touch the ground.
Yeah.
And there were some other groups of people, like another group of hikers that were around 31 miles south of the Dyatlov incident, reported that they saw strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the right on the night of the incident. So maybe these orange spheres that they saw in the sky were the parachute mines exploding.
Yeah.
So these sightings were not noted in the 1959 investigation. So the parachute mines could explain these orange like orbs that they see, but it still doesn't explain like the trauma and the missing body parts.
But do we know? I mean, I don't know. There's no right answer. Because the parachute mines make sense. Like a lot of it makes sense, I feel like.
The loud explosions.
They freak out. They're in the tent.
They're sleeping maybe.
They're sleeping. They freak out. They take off in different directions.
Because there's
they don't
things
know
exploding overhead.
And then, I mean, more than one thing can be true. Because say they take off and they're disoriented. They're just leaving the area because it's
dark. Scary.
And then they get hypothermia. And then, I mean, do we know where their clothing were found? Was all the clothing found on the people who had taken it
or
later
back
on?
in the tent? There was a ton of stuff left in the tent.
Yeah. So say the people who were found naked, or not naked, but in their underwear, experienced hypothermia. The people who had multiple layers of clothing survived and still tried to warm themselves up with clothing left in the tent. I think this one makes the most sense to me. It really does. Other than the tongue situation. I mean, I don't know what that's about. That's weird.
The next theory is radioactive testing. So reports from family and friends that saw the bodies described them as having an orange or very tan skin and gray hair.
Wait, what?
12-year-old Yuri Konstovich, who later became the head of this like Dyatlov Foundation, he attended 5 of the hikers' funerals, and he recalled that the skin had a, quote, deep brown tan. There was radioactivity detected on some of the clothing that was recovered. This, along with the Soviet authorities not releasing information about the hikes, led people to believe that it was a kind of a cover-up of some sort. The discoloration of the bodies can actually be explained by what was happening to the bodies having been exposed to the elements, though, for 3 months. And the concealment of information regarding the hikes was standard procedure in the USSR rather than like secrecy. Like they just didn't release information all that much. But by the late 1980s, all of the files had been released. There was radiation found on some of the clothing, like I said, but these like therum gas mantles that they commonly used in kerosene lanterns, they're known to emit a small amount of alpha radiation. They're thinking like maybe the lanterns they were using is how they got radiation on their clothing. That's not like been decided 100%. So the Soviets, like, even though they didn't release all that information, that was kind of something they were notoriously secretive about, was like military testing. We just don't,
of course.
Yeah, that's kind of a common thing.
But the whole radiation thing, that's interesting because, like, one, like you said, there could be other things that could cause a small amount of radiation, but if they're not telling you how much, like I would think if they were exposed to enough radiation that would cause them to die ultimately, it would be a significant amount. But if it was a small amount that could be attributed to a lantern, like that's a huge difference.
Yeah, but
so
having
if you don't really
orange or tan skin and gray hair.
the gray hair is really crazy because the orange skin, again, like I can say, okay, maybe that was the mortuary or whatever trying to make them look not frozen to death.
Okay, sure.
But why would you have gray hair?
I don't.
Does radiation make your hair gray?
I don't know.
When they say orange skin, do they mean like the radiation that causes you to have a suntan?
I don't know.
Is that the same thing? I don't know. Okay, more questions than answers, like usual.
That's how it's going to be. Yep. So the orange spheres, we're going to go back to those for a second because like there were multiple reports of these orange spheres in the
Aliens.
sky. UFOs.
Yes.
So was this like some compelling unknown force? Was it like an alien super weapon?
Yes.
So this is a quote. It says, the orbs themselves could have been a life form. The orbs themselves could have been extraterrestrial probes, says this guy Bill Burns from the History Channel's Ufologists. He says it could have been inadvertent. The orbs, in probing the area where the humans were, created collateral damage. Maybe they didn't mean to harm the humans. Maybe it wasn't an attack as much as the power of the orbs. The energy was so intense, the humans were prematurely aged, eradicated, and suffered all kinds of lethal biological symptoms.
Oh, wow. Maybe they came to Earth to shake tongues and it just didn't go well.
You're not buying the UFO theory?
No, I mean, it's as good as any other.
So this guy, he was the former police officer. His name's Lev Ivanov. He led the official inquest in 1959. In 1990, he published an article that included his admission that the investigation team had no rational explanation for what had happened. He also stated that after his team reported that they had seen flying spheres, he then received direct orders from high-ranking regional officers to dismiss this claim.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. The next theory, Yetis.
Oh.
So in this region of Siberia, there was this scientific conference in 2011 that had academic experts and researchers flown in from America. Evidence of footprints, a probable den, and various markers that Yetis mark their territory with led scientists to state that they were 95% sure Yetis do exist.
Which scientists are these?
Well, they also interviewed this Mansi woman who told a story of a creature called the Menk, M-E-N-K, who was 6 to 9 foot tall biped that has been known to steal people's tongues.
She wants you to stay out of her part of the tundra. She wants you guys to stay away and leave her alone.
One of the things, too, that they found in one of the journals was a quote that said, quote, "From now on, we know that the snowmen exist." But they don't really know what they're referring to. Like maybe it was some kind of like an inside joke that the hikers had written to each other.
Maybe that's what he's calling, or whoever wrote this, they're calling each other.
Snowmen?
Yeah. Like, no. No, because, all right, Yeti, right? Other name, Bigfoot. Same thing, right? Or at least cousins.
Mm-hmm.
They would leave Bigfoot prints. How could there not be any prints from anything else other than
The barefoot.
the hikers themselves? There's no Yeti fur.
No.
There's no...
But there's Yeti markings on the trees. But are they Yeti markings or are they...
Or is that what happens when a guy in his underwear climbs a 16-foot tree?
Possibly. So this other thing that I thought was kind of strange, the deputy head of the investigative department of the lots of Russian words office, prosecution office, he was still alive in 2015. And he had given an interview to this former prosecutor. in which he stated that he was arranging another trip to the Dyatlov Pass to fully investigate the strange deaths of the last 4 bodies when the deputy prosecutor, General Yurikov, arrived from Moscow and ordered that the case be shut down. All right, so here's a little bit of the beginning of my ripple.
Okay.
Do you want to put your
Final guess?
yeah.
Oh, gosh. I'm still saying no. God. I'm saying some sort of weaponry now. I have abandoned my avalanche theory.
Okay. So I was going with parachute mines. That was
your theory?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's what I was going with until I read this. In February of 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation into the incident.
What?
Although only 3 possible explanations were being considered.
Okay. What are they?
An avalanche,
Okay.
a slab avalanche.
Wait, is that what it's called? Is that the thing that I was talking about?
When
Like
it
when the tent?
just slides?
Yeah.
You'll see.
Okay.
Or a hurricane.
What? Was that an undetected hurricane that went that nobody ever knew about?
Right. The weather never reported.
Okay.
The possibility of a crime had been totally discounted.
Well, did we ever think it was a crime?
So a lot of people did. Especially a lot of the family members. In 2015, the investigative committee of the Russian Federation, or the ICRF, reopened the investigation. And in 2019, they concluded that a snow avalanche was the most probable cause of the accident. The results of this investigation have been challenged recently by the Office of the Prosecutor General of the Russian Federation, who in 2019 started its own investigation, and in July of 2020 came to the same conclusion as the ICRF. But both investigations have not, however, disclosed scientific explanations and keep being challenged by relatives, public, and researchers. So they're both saying, like, okay, an avalanche. This is what did it. An avalanche killed these 9 hikers.
But they're not saying why they came to that theory?
They're not giving any information as to why they're giving that.
If it's just an avalanche, then why not give your sources? Why not give your evidence? That doesn't make any sense. That makes me think even more that it was some sort of government experimentation.
They're trying to hide something.
Yeah, for sure.
So these 2 guys, this is in January now of 2021. Alexander Puzrin, who is a geotechnical engineer at ETH Zurich, one of Switzerland's Federal Institutes of Technology, and this other guy, Johann Guam, head of the Snow Avalanche Simulation Laboratory at EPFL. He's another Swiss Federal Technical Institute. They teamed up together to create an analytical model and computer simulations to try to replicate exactly what happened. And they literally, these 2 men, and I read as much as I could at least of their report, and the mathematical equations that they were doing looked literally like another language. Like, I mean, I know tangent, cosine, sine, like some of that stuff, but like these huge I'll post some of these on Instagram, just the equations themselves. I was so, like, I had no idea what I was looking at. It was, these brains of these men are insane. But the abstract, like, purpose of their experiment was to, this is what it says. It says, a snow avalanche hypothesis was proposed, among other theories, but was found to be inconsistent with the evidence of a lower than usual slope angle, scarcity of avalanche signs, uncertainties about the trigger mechanism, and abnormal injuries of the victims. Kind of what we've been saying all along. There's just too many weird things going on for this to be just a straight avalanche. So based on the information that they concluded, they go back to the reports from the initial investigation, and they described the underlying snow layer on the mountain that didn't like clump together, which provided a weak, like slippery base that a lot of the overlying snow could easily slide over.
Right, yeah.
That's kind of like what you were saying, like kind of like not compacted. It was just like sliding.
Yeah, like, yeah.
And this quote from one of the Alexander Pezrin, one of the engineers, he said, quote, "The local topography played a trick on them." And then they talk about like the cut that the hikers made in the snow to pitch their tent, like that angle thing that I had said about the 30 degrees.
Yeah.
It actually destabilized the slope. But in order to cause like an avalanche, more snow would have had to collect. And then the weather reports didn't show any snowfall. So like that wasn't something that was happening.
Did it show any hurricanes?
Did not show any hurricanes.
Okay.
But even though there was no snow reportedly falling, the journal entries that they did find told that there were very strong winds, or katabatic winds, which are, quote, heavy clumps of frigid air that brought large amounts of snow from higher up down toward the campsite, increasing the load on the already precarious slope. Are you following so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So these researchers, like, they built these computer simulations to show the avalanche that could have occurred wouldn't actually have been like a huge avalanche. And they kind of compared it to an ice block the size of an SUV, or like around 16 feet long. The small size of this ice block explains why no evidence of an avalanche was found during the initial investigation.
Okay.
Because it wasn't big enough to look like an avalanche. It was just some little 16-foot ice block.
Right, but if you're in a tent and you're experiencing this kind of weather, could it be big enough to scare you into thinking that you're in serious danger? I mean, that's still a fucking SUV. That still sounds super dangerous.
A giant SUV made out of an ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Yeah.
And dangerous.
Uh-huh.
So they are saying that it would have like infilled the cutout campsite before being quickly buried by fresh snowfall. So they're saying it, you know, this ice block came down, and then what little snowfall came covered it up, because so it wasn't like a big obvious avalanche.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool too, because these two scientists, they watched the Disney movie Frozen, and like they were super intrigued by how realistic the avalanches in that movie were made, and they created a lot of their computer software based on like they actually went to Hollywood and met with like the Disney animators and got a lot of their ideas from them to create their computer simulations.
Okay, why does that make me think that these people are totally not credible at all anymore?
Well, they also researched like the General Motors. When General Motors was kind of like doing their seatbelt tests and stuff, they took 100 cadavers and pretty much like put them in like crash test dummy situations.
Wait, they put real dead bodies in these?
Back in the 70s. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so creepy.
They hit them with like these different weights at different velocities to see like what would happen in a car crash.
Imagine it being the janitor who has to clean all
of that
up.
would be terrible. Ugh, yuck. So they discovered that when the hikers were in their sleeping bags, they kind of made like a bed out of all of their skis and then placed their sleeping bags on top of the skis.
Sounds like a really bad idea.
Well, but it meant that the avalanche, which hit them as they slept, struck an unusually rigid target. So they're not like sleeping on soft snow. They're actually sleeping on super hard, you know, strong pieces of wood. And they concluded that like this 16 long block of snow could break the ribs and skulls of people sleeping on a rigid surface. So like the people that had the skull fractures or the ribs, broken ribs. So these injuries are so severe to obviously, you know, break however many ribs, but not severe enough that they're not going to kill you immediately.
So instead of sleeping on snow, which would have absorbed the impact more, they have like a solid
surface
that's
under them.
Okay.
So what they think is that the snow fell on them, this avalanche, hits them, covers their tent, for the most part with snow. They cut themselves out of this smothered tent. They fled in a panic towards some kind of shelter, which would be the wooded area. And 3 of them that were severely injured were found, but everyone else made it quite a bit farther away to the trees.
Okay.
So it's likely that the more able-bodied survivors maybe helped drag their injured friends in an attempt to rescue them.
And then they succumbed to hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But where'd her tongue go? Where's her tongue?
That part is still a mystery.
What if she bit her tongue?
So
when the avalanche hit.
One person thought or suggested that maybe she was screaming when it happened and her tongue was out, and maybe a rock hit her maybe jaw, which forced her to bite her tongue off in the pressure of the rock.
Well, I guess we should also consider that she's missing the tip of her nose and part. But if you're falling, I mean, snow is like sandpaper, right? It's really fucking cold, and you're just grinding your face along it.
Yeah, but she drank a lot of her own blood. Remember?
Yeah, I'm thinking she bit her tongue
and was still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think
that's
the theory of her maybe yelling, you're screaming, you're scared, and something hard hits you in the face because you can't see, it's dark.
Or even if you're just talking, and all of a sudden you could just get hit by a fucking SUV made out of ice.
And your tongue goes flying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the Dyatlov team members.
Wait, eyeballs are gone too. Forgot about that part.
Mm-hmm. And eyebrows.
How do your eyeballs come out?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to think about this a little longer. All right.
So Puzrin, one of the researchers, he says that the Dyatlov team members, they were totally competent people who would never have foreseen the danger of clearing a space for their tent on what looked like a gentle slope. So they're saying that this is just some freak accident that no one could have foreseen happen.
That sucks.
And then I'm going to just end with this little poem that it comes from the book 1079, The Overwhelming Force of the Dyatlov Pass. And this is a letter written by, I don't want to say the name.
It'll be in the show notes.
Okay.
If you want to look it up.
Krivenishkyokov or whoever on December 27th, 1958. And it was addressed to Igor. And there's a whole bunch of it. They're talking about the upcoming trip. And he's like, what should I pack? I have my own skis. How much money should I bring? Just talking about the trip and how excited he is. But the letter contains a poem which he dedicated to his fellow hikers. And it says, hello, everyone. Happy New Year, hiking friends. Let me wish you. Camping in faraway mountains, ascending summits in the wild. Let your backpacks be light, weather always fine. Winter not too cold, and summer to be mild. The dirt not to bother you, the sugar not to get wet. When the river is boiling and you go overboard. Pants not to shred into tatters, so you can patch them and go. After drying your jacket at night, to have left more than a sleeve. Your shoes to be good, not a year, but dozens of years. Wish you're to leave your tracks all over the map of Russia. The end.
Wow. That sucks.
It's kind of a sad story, right?
It is. That's a bummer. Well, we're still talking about you
60 years later.
Something years later.
There is a really nice little memorial still out there, and
yeah, but who wants to go out there and see it?
a lot of people. I don't.
That's
I
like
don't
the
underst-
Andes too, though.
I don't understand cold. Like, nope. I don't like the cold. I don't want to be in the cold.
Wow.
Do you want to tell me about your brown
Yeah, let me tell you.
turd or whatever it's called?
The brown note. When I thought it was from some like stupid comedy movie or something, it was on South Park.
Oh, jeez, that's credible.
But the brown note, according to Wikipedia, is a hypothetical infrasonic frequency capable of causing fecal incontinence by creating acoustic resonance.
I'm so glad you can't talk either.
Because you gave me fucking vodka. In the human bowel. The name
Brown. Turd.
is relating to the common color of human feces. So supposedly the frequencies are between 5 and 9. What's HZ?
Hertz.
Okay, I don't know. Sure. Which are below the lower frequencies limit of human hearing. So the high power sound waves below 20 hertz are felt in the body. So if you ever you've just feel, but if you go all the way between 5 and 9, that's what makes you poop yourself.
So how do you make something that?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Oh, thanks.
Because in 2005, the TV show Mythbusters attempted to verify whether or not the brown note was real.
I loved that show.
It was really great. I heard that they the one dude, I think the guy that kind of had that scruffy mustache.
The glasses?
No,
The other guy.
Did
His
they
friend.
both have glasses?
I don't know. There's the bald one.
One of them was, I don't remember. One of them was a total asshole though. The old guy, I guess. Okay, so what did they do? The host of the show tried a series of frequencies as low as 5 hertz, attaining a level of 120 decibels of sound pressure at 9 hertz, and up to 153 dB, whatever that stands for, at frequencies above 20 hertz. But the rumored physiological effects did not materialize. Imagine volunteering for that. Being the person who was hey,
testing that.
guess what?
I'll see if I poop myself.
Yeah, let's see if you shit your pants. On live television, well, not live television, but on television.
I'm sure they're getting paid enough for it.
Subjects all reported some physical anxiety and shortness of breath, even a small amount of nausea.
Oh,
That sucks. That's kind of creepy. That makes me wonder what it's doing to your brain. Are you permanently damaging yourself somehow by doing that? I don't know. But this was dismissed by the host, noting that the sound at that frequency and the intensity moves air rapidly in and out of one's lungs. The show declared the brown note myth busted. So, yeah, the brown note, the more you know. That is crazy, though. It seems like you can cause other physiological effects at, weird
frequencies.
levels and stuff that cause nausea, visual disturbance.
I mean, even the sound, remember the whole nails on a chalkboard? Everyone kind of gets the chills and, creepy
things that
feeling
can
from
actually
that.
make your hair stand up and put shivers down your spine.
So I could see why some certain frequencies make a person feel like they're going crazy.
I mean, the smell of coffee makes me want to poop.
Coffee and a cigarette.
There you go.
That's what they say. Good thing moving. That's your brown note. Gross.
All right.
So that's the end of my long story. Thanks, Lauren, for suggesting that to us.
Thanks, Lauren. Send us more of your suggestions. We still have a lot of catching up to do, but we will get to them eventually.
We will. And until then, don't forget to be a fountain.
And out a drain.
Bye.
Bye.